Good afternoon, YouTube family. How are we today? My name is Anthony. This is Palmetto Prepared, and today we're going to talk about alcohol, spirits, beer, wine, all that fun stuff during or to prep with it. Like during prepping kind of thing. So I wanted to try to use this video, and this video isn't about like bartering, which is what most people put. Most channels put with alcohol. This is a barter item. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times where bartering these are going to be applicable, and by all means, if you want to stock up to just barter, by all means. But I want to do a video to kind of open up another idea of why you have alcohol and why you should stash or at least have the ability to make alcohol. Now, this isn't going to be strictly for like an SHTF like scenario. This could easily go along the lines of a smaller, like tornado, hurricane, flooding, some sort of situation where you can't get to a hospital or a doctor because, let's face it, alcohol has been used for how long now? For medicine, especially spirits. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it first with spirits and why it was designed, why it came about. Now, in the 8th century AD, an Arabic alchemist named Abu Musa Jabir Iba Hayyan, I know I destroyed that, but that's, I never heard it, so I'm just kind of reading it, designed the still, which would effectively distill alcohol. He was interested in the science behind it, not drinking it. Now, it obviously went through a couple, they've been distilling rice and mare's milk since like 800 BC in China, so it's not like a new thing, but it's just kind of the science behind distilling and why you're doing it, trying to get a higher alcohol content. Now, the first documented use of distilled alcohol comes from 12th century Italy in a medieval school for use in medical, like a medieval medical school. So they wanted medical applications for it. Now, it wasn't until about the 16th century that it started to become like, drank and used more primarily for getting messed up and wasted versus actual medical situations, because obviously people are going to find stuff, figure it out, and yeah, that's how it works. But even still, it's got plenty of medicinal uses. If it's above 60% or 120 proof, it can be used as a surgical alcohol, like to sterilize surgical equipment. Now, obviously, this is what rubbing alcohol and all that stuff's for, very high proof, but if you are in a pinch and you need, to sterilize something, anything over 120 proof can do that. Now, if you're over 40% or 80 proof, it's an effective disinfectant. So if you have a cut or a wound or something, and you need to disinfect it, there you go. The higher the alcohol content, the better it's going to be for disinfecting, that kind of thing. So it all depends on what you're looking for in terms of. I would suggest, definitely stashing both. But say if you're making it, then that's where that's going to come into play. Now, if you would like to stockpile it, the best thing about spirits is their expiration dates. If you're over, the higher the alcohol percentage, the longer they'll last. You got moonshine, legit moonshine and Everclear, which almost have an indefinite, expiration date. The best thing about them is you can take a jar of actual moonshine, open it, drink it with your mouth, put it down, lightly put the lid on it, and it's still good for like indefinite. It's not like beer where you open it, close it, and things can go flat, crap, sour, nasty, or wine, same thing. So, because in order for bacteria to really work, it's got to be like less than 20% alcohol. The fact that it's more than 20% alcohol means bacteria can't work and degrade it. So, boom, perfect. It's the best thing about having spirits. Now, obviously, barter is there. Barter is always going to be around, and I completely understand that. And I wanted to get a little bit past beyond just bartering with this video, so that's why I wanted to try to put in more uses for it. Now, medicinal uses are fantastic. The ones that I would stockpile for medicinal uses are whiskey, vodkas, Everclear, moonshine, that kind of thing. You can stockpile like the liquor or liqueur if if your heart desires that. The only drawback with liqueur is the expiration date's not going to be near as long. Especially if you got something like Bailey's that has cream in it, obviously it's going to go bad quickly. Or something like a rum with a really high sugar content, obviously it's going to degrade quicker than a Everclear, which is just pure like eye burning alcohol. So just keep that in mind whenever you're stashing stuff. And I mean, I don't drink personally, so my liquor is usually pretty good to go. The only time I really drink is when I'm making some sort of medical concoction or using it medicinally. So my liquor lasts a long time. But if you are one of those people that likes to have a good drink, then by all means, stash up on whatever you want, whatever you like. Now, something that you can do with alcohol, especially behind me right here, something like an Everclear, is a tincture. I can't say that word. Tincture. Whatever. Tincture. Tincture. Why can't I say that word? Anyway, it's basically a medicine made by dissolving a drug in alcohol. It's a concentrated liquid herbal extract. A lot of people are doing that now with marijuana, like a CBD infused tincture. I'm going to try to avoid even saying that word from now on because I can't even say it. But you don't have to use just marijuana. You can use turmeric, elderberry, echinacea. Basically what you do is you're going to take your herb or your plant part and you're going to soak it in alcohol for weeks. Let it kind of infuse with itself. Then you're going to strain out the solid and keep the liquid. Now the best thing about it is with it being so concentrated, you don't need it very much. So if you're doing something like a marijuana infused, a little dropper underneath the tongue will be a super fast acting agent, and they're doing research now using that for CBD oil obviously, but in this form with the T word to treat arthritis and so many other issues. Now same thing with turmeric and elderberry. You just want to make sure that if you're actually going to start making your own, that you know which part of the plant you may be using, and you might not be able to use it, like ingest it. You might just have to use it topically, because there are some things, like with an elderberry, the bark and leaves and stuff contain cyanide. You don't want to go ahead and use that and eat it like you can with the elderberry, the berry itself. So just keep that part in mind. But that's basically why I would stash away some liquor. Now, if you can get to the point where you can make it. Now, if you look back in my past video, I talk about how making alcohol is so frowned upon, and it's one of those things the government's just got a big, I wouldn't say monopoly, but they really do. Like, you got to license to be able to make it. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out there and make it without having the government, but whatever they don't know, won't hurt them. So, I got a few things behind me. Vodka, whiskey. If you can make it, by all means, especially if you're in a scenario where we are in a SHTF or a more far gone part of society than we are now, then learning to make it might be very beneficial to you and your family in terms of just medicinal uses, but trade. And I can't think of any point where having alcohol would actually be a bad thing, because let's face it, when you look at the precious metal market, it goes up and down. But how many times have you ever gone out to the liquor store and seen a liquor that's actually gone down in price? I know I sure have, and I've been buying alcohol for legally 15 years. Or, not 15 years, 12. Anyway, just one of those things where I've never seen alcohol actually go down in price, so it might actually be a good idea to take some of the higher proofs, especially something like an Everclear, and stash it away. I mean, you really can't go wrong here. So, barter-wise, obviously, it's a big thing, but medicinal-wise too. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I make, for the wife especially, but myself included, if you're sick, you got, say, a head cold, your throat's starting to hurt, hot toddy will totally knock that one right out. I like to do that with my wife. My ingredients for hot toddy are probably different than yours. I don't think there's actually a necessary, like, hardcore, this is what a hot toddy is. Personally, my opinion is make tea, any kind of tea with water, put honey in it, put lemon juice in it, put a little bit of cinnamon, and some whiskey. And there's your hot toddy. And it usually, works out to knock out a cold. That's why I stashed whiskey, especially, because especially during flu season or your throat season, just a simple little cold, it'll knock it right out. And during this season right now, like where the trees are trying to get everybody pregnant, all this pollen up in your face, a shot of moonshine will usually knock that clear my sinuses out hardcore. So if I'm feeling pretty crappy, like after I just got done mowing the lawn or something, and I'm real stuffed up, then boom, a nice shot of high proof alcohol works out great. So boom, liquor, that's all I'm going to say, spirits, that kind of thing. So now we're going to get into beer. And with beer, beer and wine aren't really great for stashing. Now, liquor, there's so many different uses, because you can barter and you can use it for medicine. You can technically do the same with beer and wine, except the medicinal purposes aren't really there, so stashing it is more along the lines of barter. But the thing is, they don't have very long shelf lives. Now, some wines, yes, you can leave them for decades and they'll get better as long as they're not opened. But beer really has a finite shelf life, and it doesn't make sense stashing a whole bunch of it away unless you go through it and you rotate your stock. If you're one of those beer drinkers, then by all means, absolutely stash them. But for the most part, it's going to go bad well before the real point. The whole purpose of this one is to actually learn how to make it, and you can make this without having a government license that gives you the permission to actually do that. So the reason why, though, we'll get back to the point. The reason why beer was invented, or just why people have been doing it since like 10,000 BC, is because it's a really good way to supplement nutrition. And sometimes with your barley or your malts and that kind of thing, wild yeast seems to find their way in them, and it accidentally ferments it. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, happy accident, I have beer. And barley and all kinds of cereal wheats and whatnot have been cultivated for, several thousands of years. So obviously by accident, with no refrigeration and whatnot, fermentation of those grains is going to happen. So boom, hey, this is beer. I like this. Let's keep doing it. Now, Egyptians, pharaohs and all that stuff used to make beer for nutrition. Like that was actually part of the slaves building the pyramids. Part of their nutritional plan was to have so many, pints or liters of beer per day, because that was nutrition for them. And it was also a safe alternative to drinking water. Now, this came about in Europe during, especially the medieval times, the Dark Ages, when water was, for lack of a better word, deadly. Especially when you got humans dying in water and cholera and all that bad stuff. Beer was a safe alternative to water. So the monks especially, that's what most monasteries and monks did in the Dark Ages, medieval times, was they were making beer. And it was these monks that figured out that barley fermented with a wild yeast was very common to make their beer. But then they started adding hops to it. It didn't catch on really till the 12th century, but it showed that it made the beer taste better, and it extended its life, basically preserving it. So this little experiment happened around the 12th century, made beer last a little bit longer, and we could start taking it on ships for longer extended travel. And there's a little rumor going around that that's why they stopped Plymouth Rock, was because they ran out of beer and they needed more materials to make beer. So who knows if that's actually true or not, unless you have a time machine, but hey, it's a fun little story regardless. Now, the IPA, the India Pale Ale, from reading and doing my research on it, that was discovered or developed out of necessity by those monks, because they needed to ship beer to faraway outposts. Now, back then, the English Empire was humongous. They had to go to India, Burma, all that kind of thing, South Africa. So you need to be able to ship beer that far. Now, you don't want it to go sour. You don't want it to get turn really crappy and stale. So they developed the IPA, India Pale Ale, to make it last longer. So they discovered that beer with a higher alcohol content and extra hops would prolong its life. So that's how that worked and extended. So merchants, all that stuff, could take beer with them, get better nutrition while they're traveling, and that's why beer has been around for so long. Now, wine, on the other hand, has been around the same way, but it was real big, obviously, in Rome and Europe, but it's all over the world actually. As long as you can get grapes, you can make wine, or fruits. I should say grapes. But even back then, Roman times, wine was well You know, that was a status symbol above beer. Like the peasants drank beer, the nobles or whoever drank wine. So it was kind of that status thing, but it's still the same principle in terms of a little bit of nutrition. It was able to extend your harvest of your fruit. So if you didn't want your fruit to go bad because you weren't able to preserve it, then you make wine and you're able to get your nutritional content from the fruit in your wine. That kind of thing. You know, using yeast to your advantage to prolong your food. Now, obviously, we're in a situation or in a society now where we have refrigeration, modern canning techniques, plenty of options to make things last longer, to where we don't need to make wine to have the nutritional content. We make wine for the taste and the alcohol content, but same thing with principle with beer. You have to look at it in terms of like the nutritional aspect of being able to preserve some nutrition without modern methods. So that's why they came about. That's why we do it. So if you are going to be doing your preparations, or you really want to get into stashing away some alcohol, by all means, stash it away. Or a really good hobby to get into if you're looking for an extra hobby on the side is to learn how to make it. Now, I can't tell you how, I don't say awesome it would be, but I mean, let's face it, if you're in a survival group, and this guy's really good at carpentry, this one's really good at security, this one's a blacksmith, and you're over here making alcohol for medicinal and recreational purposes, then you have a very needed function in that group, in your actual part of your group. So it might actually help you if that's the niche you want to be in. So this is something I definitely want to explore going further. I've actually flirted with the idea of getting my ethanol license so I can learn how to make ethanol in terms of powering, machinery when we can't get gasoline anymore. So it's kind of one of those things I'm going to jump into. I'm doing a little bit of research on it now. We'll see how that works out. But I just want to do this video because I wanted everybody to see, kind of open the thought avenues that alcohol, there's better ways to use alcohol besides just bartering. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't just have to barter alcohol. You can burn it, you can use it for medicine and all kinds of fun stuff. So with that being said, if you like my video today, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you as part of the channel, and I will catch y'all later, okay?